Hello and welcome in front of my shop. As I promised, today we're going to talk about one build I'm making for a charity event. And this is about these Adirondack chairs. Let's follow me for this build and let's see what it looks like. This is made out of red cedar, and this is what we're going to build together. So this chair is 38 inches and a half tall by 36 inches deep and 29 and 3/4 wide. The seat is 19 and a half inches wide and the arms go up to 20 inches and 3/4. So let's build this together. So I'm starting from rough lumber here, starting on the miter saw, chop one edge and making sure there's no crack. As you can see, this one is cracked, it breaks easy. So I'm gonna keep going until I don't have any crack and then cut to the rough length I'm looking after. This one is fine. And to cut to the length I need, I'm gonna use just the template I made to make it easy on me so I don't have to measure. So I cut all the parts to rough length. And as you can see, I cut in two passes. I do like a scoring pass at the top, and then I go all the way through. That's to make sure it doesn't bind on the blade. Then we can thickness all the pieces. I actually don't bother jointing a face here. It's not fine furniture, so I just go through the planer on both faces. It doesn't really matter if it's not perfect. So I run all the pieces through a planer to get the dimension I'm looking for thickness. In this case, it's going to be around 7/8 of an inch. Once everything's planed, I can look for the faces I want to put together. In this case, I'm going to use blue tape and CA glue to attach two boards together so I can use the template to trace the contours and then cut the pieces and make sure they are exactly the same. So I will do this for the legs and the armrests. One, two, three, four, five, and we're glued together. I'm going to trace the contour using the template. I trace the contours using a Sharpie marker. That's to give me enough margin to make sure I don't overcut with my bandsaw. If I see some black left, it means I'm still good. For the arms and the legs, I go to a bandsaw and cut the contours. And then I go to the belt sander to sand according to my template marking. So now here I don't want to see any black left from the Sharpie marker. This is to make sure I got to the right dimension. And I repeat this for all the parts. And once in a while I clean the belt with a cleaning stick. Then I'm gonna join one edge. This is to make sure I have a good reference point for the table saw later, so I can cut all the pieces to the right width. The width is 2.5 inches here. I'm using the small table saw because red cedar is very easy to cut and the pieces are not too wide or not too long. And obviously I'm using a push stick to stay safe. And as you can see in the very back, you see the cyclone is doing its work with all the dust going in it. Then I go back to the miter saw and I'm using a story stick where I drew the dimensions I needed on the stick, and this is to make sure all the parts will be at the same length. So I'm cutting one edge to make sure it's perpendicular to my reference space, and then I use a story stick to cut at the final length. And I repeat that for all the parts. And at the end of the day, I end up with all my pieces ready for the next step, ready for assembly. Oops, not assembly, sanding. I need to sand all the pieces, and I do start with 120 grit and go to 220 grit before assembly. I will not bore you with all the pieces, so here's a small snippet. And then I drill pilot holes in all the pieces prior to assembly. And for this I'm using a pilot hole with a countersink bit on it. Then I start putting together the seat using exterior deck screws. I make sure the first slat is perpendicular to the side. And I keep going for the other side and all the other pieces. And this is a complete seat. Then we're gonna work on the legs and the pieces to rest the armrest. And to make sure I drill the hole at the right location, I'm gonna scribe on the other side the piece I'm gonna screw into. This way my screws will be at the right place. And then I'm gonna use a clamp as a third hand to help me place the parts correctly so I can sink my screw in. And to make sure they're going to be at the right location, I use a clamp to secure them in place onto the seat. And then I'll be able to attach the crossbar that goes from one end to the other end. Then we can attach the seat to the legs. And to make sure the legs are vertical, I use a level. So we can attach the sides to a seat. And we have the base done. I am now routing the armrest to make sure there are no sharp corners and to give it a better look. So I'm going to do that on both armrests, on both sides. Then I'm tracing on the underside where the armrest will be going on the legs. I'm gonna drill on the backside pilot holes, making sure I do not countersink the holes, and then I'm gonna flip the board and countersink on the other side. And I position the armrest onto the legs. Put one screw in, and I make sure it's located correctly, and put the other screws in. And I do that for both sides. And now you have a base with the two armrests. Then we're going to start working on the back of the seat. For this I'm using spacers to make sure the slats are in the correct location. And then I'm finding the right location for the crossbar in the back. And I can drill pilot holes for the back and then make my way forward. It's now time to assemble the two pieces together. This is a tricky part. The location of the back is kind of tricky, and for this I'm using all the help I can find from clamps. Clamp it from the bottom, clamp it at the top at the correct location, and I put the screws on the bottom part, and then we're gonna drill the top here at an angle. So I'm really sighting from the bottom to make sure I'm drilling in the middle. And then I put one screw, take off the clamp, put the second screw. And then we have a finished product. As you can see here, I got plenty of wood for 3 other chairs. I'm making 2 for one charity event and another 2 for another one. And I hope you enjoyed following this build with me. If you liked it, like and subscribe, and I would thank you very much for this. Thank you again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.